Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning, CHOY's current affairs show. I'm Laura McKenzie. This past Sunday, Earthquakes Canada reported 3 earthquakes off the coast of Port Hardy. The swarm's magnitude ranged from 4.3 to 5.9. More than 50 earthquakes have been reported by Earthquakes Canada off the coast of Northern Vancouver Island since September 14th, the biggest reaching a magnitude of 5.9. The government of BC notes that earthquakes are common on our coast, with an average of 3,000 earthquakes reported every year. This occurs because the coast of the province is seismically active, located in an area known as the Cascadia subduction zone. The Cascadia subduction zone stretches from Vancouver Island down to California. This is where the Juan De Fuca Plate and the North American Plate meet. It is when the Juan De Fuca Plate slips under the North American Plate that an earthquake can occur and be felt on Vancouver Island. These earthquakes can also cause tsunamis, sending large damaging waves into the coast of the province. An earthquake can happen at any moment, and it is impossible to predict when the next one will happen or how big it could be. The recent quakes in Port Hardy are a good reminder of this, and to be prepared if one was to happen. Today, I spoke with Jerry Grant over the phone and Taryn Moore over Zoom. Both work at the BC Earthquake Alliance on earthquake preparation and how to keep you and your family safe in an event of one. And with that, let's jump into it. All right, well, hello, Taryn. Thank you for coming on Midcoast Morning. My first question for you is, can you just state your name and your title?
Yeah. Hi, Lauren. My name's Taryn Moore, and I'm a volunteer member of the board of directors for the BC Earthquake Alliance.
Okay. And do you do any other work with earthquakes?
Yeah, I work in an organizational resilience team with an insurance company here in Victoria, BC, and we're a brokerage that services organizations across North America related to sort of risk in general, not just sort of from natural hazards, but from all types of risk.
So this past Sunday, 3 earthquakes happened off the coast of Port Hardy. Is it common for there to be several earthquakes happening around the same time?
Yeah, Lauren, great question. So first, a caveat, I'm not a seismologist. So a seismologist would probably be able to answer that question more articulately and more accurately. But it certainly is common from a viewer standpoint or from an interested a person standpoint. Those earthquakes happened along the plate boundary. And so that area typically offshore to Port Hardy and Vancouver Island, about 100 kilometers or so. And so that area is very active as 2 plate boundaries collide against each other. And so seeing multiple events in sort of short succession is quite normal.
What are the biggest concerns if a notable size earthquake was to happen anywhere around Vancouver Island?
I mean, earthquakes happen without warning at this point, right? So the biggest thing is to be able to react appropriately for your context. So, we don't feel earth shaking all the time. It is moving all the time, but luckily that movement is mostly undetectable by people. When there's a larger earthquake and a shake that people feel, it's really important to know what to do, right? To protect yourself and your loved ones. And that's, essentially why we practice what we do on the third Thursday of every October. Almost 1 million British Columbians take part in the Great BC Shakeout, which is an opportunity to practice, what to do if and when the ground starts to shake. And that's essentially to protect yourself by dropping to the ground, taking cover under something sturdy, or taking cover under your arms, protecting your head and neck and vital organs, trying to be kind of a small target, and then essentially holding on until that shaking stops. The reason we do that is because most injuries and fatalities in earthquakes in North America happen because things fall on top of people, or people slip and trip and fall themselves, or also from flying objects. So something that is, becomes a projectile. And for that reason, taking precautions to protect yourself is the best thing to do. Things like collapses are not common in any place in the world, but especially not where building codes are quite strict and where we build mostly with wood and reinforced concrete and masonry materials. And the other part is that if a building collapses, kind of no matter what you do, you're probably not in a good position, right? So for the best course of action for the majority of people when the ground starts to shake is to do that drop, cover, and hold on technique. The other part of that is it prevents the kind of panic reaction that many people would feel or would want to would feel naturally. And then the tendency would be to sort of run. We saw that in Morocco in some of the CCTV video footage and social media footage where people were really just running from place to place. And, there's no sense of whether a place is safe or unsafe. There, this kind of just panic, and that causes huge risks in and of itself. So, so for us, what we recommend to people is to calm that sense of panic and try to protect yourself. And then, once this shaking stops, from a small quake, it could be, a number of seconds. For a larger quake, it could be upwards of sort of 5 to 6 minutes or more. And that's really a time where you need to keep your wits about you and then think about what's next, right? So if something is quite damaging and major, you'd want to use that time to think about, where your loved ones are. How are you going to communicate with them? Where is your meeting place? What's in your plan, your family plan or your business plan around what to do post-earthquake, especially folks that are living on Vancouver Island, where we know that earthquake risk is substantial. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And so there's no real excuse for not practicing what to do, not planning what to do. And so really, when that earthquake shakes, you'll be ready, right? And you'll feel confident in adapting to this new normal, right? Are windows broken? Is power and cell service working? How do I now transition into response mode from, what was, prior to the shaking, what was a normal day, hopefully, then, everything shifts. And what did that look like for you and your family, and then, your community, and also then your business and your livelihood. So that's what we practice. And that's what we preach at the BC Earthquake Alliance and with the Great BC Shakeout.
What are some of the ways to stay safe if the possibility of a tsunami was to occur after an earthquake?
Sure. Yeah. Tsunamis are always a risk, especially in the Pacific Basin. 90% of global earthquakes happen in the Pacific Basin. It's a big bathtub around the Ring of Fire. And any earthquake that's sort of a sizable, 6.5 or 7 on the magnitude is kind of the threshold at which just the ground motion itself can displace enough water to create a tsunami. Now, depending on how much water is displaced, the tsunami can be quite large, like we saw in 2011 with the Japanese Tohoku tsunami that basically traversed the entire Pacific Basin, Pacific Ocean, or it can be relatively small and localized. And the other way that earthquakes can cause tsunamis is by creating landslides. So even something, let's say, that's not on the West Coast, but something that's in the Salish Sea area. If you have a big enough shake and steep slopes or saturated slopes that might fall into the water, or even sub-sea slopes that are unstable, if those move, those could create a tsunami, a localized tsunami as well. So the best course of action in terms of safety for tsunami risk is, if you feel strong shaking, something that knocks you off your feet, something that's really, a substantial shake. If you're by the coast, you should probably get to high ground, right? Depending on where you are, that high ground could be relatively close or it could be far, but certainly that awareness of, where are you and what is the risk if a tsunami should be created. And again, it's something that typically we don't, if it's a local event, we don't have a warning for it. But in general, if you feel that strong shaking, expect that if you're by the water, it's probably not the best place to be. So going to high ground is a good idea.
Okay, and sorry, I'm just going to reiterate what you just said. So even though we're in Nanaimo, we usually get told we don't have to worry about tsunamis because, we have the island mainland blocking us. Even if a big earthquake was to happen, we should still get to high ground if we're, say, hanging out at the beach or something.
Yeah. So again, like I said, the probability is very low, right? So 90% of the world's tsunamis are created in the Pacific Basin. And for those events, Nanaimo doesn't have to worry about a risk of tsunami. In the event of the big one, right, the Cascadia subduction zone event, and the way they've modeled it, Nanaimo is one of the areas that will have impacts, but those impacts are sort of on the realm of 1 to 2 meter waves, as opposed to giant walls of tsunami water that you'd see from videos in Japan and Indonesia, for example. So it is a different level of risk. But yes, I think it is important to know that even in Nanaimo, where the risk is very low and the probability is low, if there was a strong shaking and you were right, downtown by the water or by the marina or something, you shouldn't hang out there, right? You should be aware that that water could be a dangerous place, right? So being in a safer place is a good idea in Nanaimo. Again, but for a large event that takes you off your feet, that lasts for over a minute, something like that, a threshold where there's, it's not just every tremor that might create something. And certainly there's not cause for panic in that sense, but certainly if I'm in Nanaimo and there's an earthquake that's in Nanaimo, I'm protecting myself from the shaking. And then I'm thinking about, I'm watching the water. I'm trying to get away from the coastline, and I'm again aware more of my risks from things like down power lines or all kinds of other kinds of cascading impacts that can happen post earthquake.
What are some of the most important ways people can stay safe during and after the big earthquake happens?
Yeah, the best thing is always prevention, right? And preparedness, right? So the more that you can stay to what we say, the left of loss, right? So stay on the preparedness and mitigation side of the event. We know it's going to happen. There's no excuses to not prepare. But what can you do, right? In the meantime, it's little things, right? Like securing your furniture, it's moving heavy items off your shelves, it's preparing your emergency kit and your emergency plan with your family and your business and your community members. It's knowing your neighbors, right? It's having a stockpile of food and the ability to get water if your water system was down. These are the kinds of things. I mean, we see global earthquake events taking place and we see what people go through, right? Christchurch, New Zealand, or Morocco most recently. What are those folks dealing with that we could anticipate in our own sense, in our own communities, and basically prepare for, right? That's the best thing to start when you're thinking about earthquakes. Take away that fear, take away that, oh, it won't happen to me mentality, get into it and really start with small things, simple things every year that can help improve you on and on with your preparedness. And that helps you sleep at night. It'll help you to be sort of a community member with resources and with capabilities that people can rely on in any emergency, whether it's an earthquake or a flood or a windstorm. If you're prepared for an earthquake, you're prepared for most other natural hazards. And so really that's where we at the BC Earthquake Alliance really focus, is to help encourage people to take actions, give them some guidance on what actions are sort of most beneficial and, easiest to do, right? We want these things to be, not crazy expensive. We recognize that not everybody can retrofit their home or heaven forbid, move out of town to because of the earthquake risk. We want people to recognize the risk, plan for it, and then be prepared with the supplies and the plans that they need.
Okay. And for my final question, where can people learn more about earthquake preparation and earthquake risk?
Yeah, the best place to learn about earthquake risk in BC is really, the province Emergency Management and Climate Readiness BC has great preparedness materials. The federal government at Public Safety Canada also has guidance materials. The Canadian Red Cross obviously is an authority on preparation. And then obviously for us at the BC Earthquake Alliance, we run the Great BC Shakeout. So there's a website, shakeoutbc.org. And that's really a great resource for people that are wanting to specifically take and practice what to do in an earthquake. And also for different situations, right? Not everybody can drop, cover, and hold on. So what would you do if you're in a wheelchair, for example? What would you do if you don't have a table to drop, cover under? What if you're driving? These kinds of things that people will imagine and spend lots of time doing these things. And so what happens if the earthquake happens and takes place while they're doing these things? So that kind of guidance is on the Shakeout website. And then really from my perspective, the best thing to do is to practice and personalize what you think your best actions would be in an earthquake, given your knowledge of your own surroundings and what kinds of vulnerabilities and capacities you have to respond and recover as quickly as possible, so that the earthquake doesn't, do more damage than it needs to. So those resources are all online mostly, but there's also local governments as well that often will have general guidance and also information about what the local governments are doing about their own earthquake risk. So you think about systems, water systems, let's say, or transportation systems and other critical infrastructure that are vulnerable to earthquakes, and that they need to support reinforcements or to support sort of readiness. And so it's really an important component to think about that and how it impacts yourself and your family post event as well.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters Fund and listeners like you. Support Midcoast Morning and CHOI's nonprofit news department today by becoming a sustaining donor at choi.ca/donate. Local news can't survive without your support.
Hi, Jerry. Welcome to Midcoast Morning. My first question for you is just, what is your name and what is your title of work?
Okay, so my name is Jerry Grant. My day job, I'm an emergency program coordinator for the Juan De Fuca electoral area. That's the sort of the west side of Vancouver Island from Port Renfrew down to East Souk, that sort of area. And then as a volunteer, I am the chair of Shakeout BC.
Do you feel like most people are prepared for if a notable size earthquake was to happen?
I would say for my community, because I'm in a rural community, I would say we're probably 75%, because we do have so many power outages just due to winter storms, like wind storms and that sort of thing. People have learned to get prepared. A few years ago, I think it was 2018, there was a big winter storm that hit Vancouver Island, Vancouver, December, and, most of us were out power for quite a few days. So the rural communities, we tend to be more prepared for that. So we do have items that we can use when we don't have power, because that one, some of the people in my area didn't have power for up to a week.
And how could somebody prepare for an earthquake?
If you have camping equipment, having, a propane or gas little stove that you can cook on, that makes a big deal. Because the truth is, if we do have a big earthquake, we know that we're going to have our utilities interrupted, your phone, your electricity, water. So, you need to make a plan. What am I going to do if that happens? So camping equipment is a great way to start. You'd be surprised at this time of the year how many people have camping equipment that they're getting rid of. They're buying, maybe they bought newer stuff to go hiking and whatnot, and they get rid of that. So I always look at garage sales. I find that's very, very helpful. So having that sort of thing so you can cook, making sure that you have 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the size of the earthquake. If you're talking about the Cascadia subduction earthquake, we like to tell people 2 to 4 weeks. So that means you're storing non-perishable food, water, and emergency supplies. With non-perishable foods, so this is what I do. I have a case lot sale. I go in and I buy stuff that I know I'm going to like to eat if I had to eat canned goods. A lot of canned goods, if you buy them, like say it's fruit or vegetables, they do have liquid in them that you can use for drinking or cooking. So I like to tell people in your emergency kit, you buy your canned goods, you buy, different dehydrated things, you date them and you rotate them. So what I do is I buy a small container, let's say, of minute rice, which doesn't require a lot of cooking time. You just have to boil some water and pour it on and wait. So I use the liquid from the canned vegetables for that. So it's like trying to use things in a way that you might not normally use them. So again, you're storing non-perishable foods, you're storing water and emergency supplies. That could, that's everything from having a whistle, a flashlight. I particularly like headlamps, hands-free. For me, it's a big deal. Ahead of time, do a home hazard hunt or assessment. And so by this, I mean you're walking around your house, you're looking at bookcases, cabinets, and looking at them. Have you secured those to the wall? You can buy L brackets at the hardware store, and if it's a corner unit, they do have special ones for that. Recommend getting strapping for things like fridges, freezers, washers, and dryers. What else should you have secured? Your hot water tank. That hot water tank carries a lot of water, and that's water that you can use as drinking water. It's really important to be thinking about that. Having a basic kit, so having an emergency kit. So the kinds of things we would have in that, a first aid kit, a radio. So, we always suggest, I know you can have battery radios, but then you've got to always be rotating those batteries. But you can have cranked ones, you can have solar-powered ones. You have to think about sanitation, because if our water lines are interrupted, we have basic sanitary needs, right? So we need to have things like garbage bags for our own human waste, having things like moist towelettes, Lysol wipes, all sorts of those different things, because you don't want to be using up your precious water, but you want to be able to keep things clean. Having comfort items in that emergency kit, and things like a couple of books that you like, or if you have kids, comic books, or, younger kids, different types of books. Having board games, toys, that sort of thing. And Don't forget your pet. You need to have some emergency supplies for your pets. And people always think, for dog or cat, but lots of people have pets that aren't dogs or cats. They have birds, they have reptiles, they have fish. So really making a plan of, like if we couldn't get anywhere for 2 weeks, do I have enough stuff to, for our pets? It's that sort of thing. When we do have, let's say it's the big one, and of course the phones are going to be interrupted. The best way to contact people really is by text message, having an out-of-area contact that's not in an area that would be affected by the earthquake. So for the big one, I would say if you have friends in the interior or Alberta or beyond, being their out-of-area contact and using text messaging. And some people say, well, it didn't go through. They actually sit in a queue. So even though it may not go through immediately, it will sit there. It will eventually get delivered. And you can, definitely make sure that people know that you're okay or not okay. Other things that I like people to do is to make copies of all their important documents. So that's things like your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, any mortgage type documents, your passport, insurance papers. So what I do is I scan those. After I've scanned those, I save those to a flash drive. But beyond saving that sort of thing, I have things that are precious. So I have the first picture that my son ever did in kindergarten. I've scanned that, and it's also on my flash drive. I have letters from family members that mean a lot to me. Again, they're scanned and on that flash drive. All sorts of photographs that, if they were damaged because of an earthquake, because you don't know what time of the year it's going to be. Could be raining, could be anything. I have all that. So I know that I have a lot of different things that are going to mean something to me, because let's be honest, we're going to be very stressed afterwards. Some people as well have the copies, like pictures and that. They'll keep copies as well in their emergency kits, and it does give a lot of people comfort. I suggest another comfort thing for that emergency kit, for me, it's an emergency bag of potato chips. And I'm always happy to rotate that. My husband has recently taken a liking to Werther's, so I also have a bag of Werther's candies in there. Some people have licorice. Sometimes it's just not a food item. It could be something else, but something that's going to give you comfort when you're really stressed, right? Battery banks. You can get battery banks now that can last up to 4 days, so you're charging your phone over and over again, because not everybody has a generator, a gas-powered generator, especially people that live in condos. That's not something you can easily have in a condo or, apartment building. You can buy electric generators that you charge ahead of time, and they vary in price. They're kind of the same price as gas ones. So there is that option, but you've got to, most people have to save up their money to buy something like that. But again, it works really well.
So next I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios in which an earthquake could happen. And could you tell me what somebody should do if an earthquake was to occur? First one being if somebody is driving in a car.
Yes. So you're driving in a vehicle, and if it's a big one, you are going to feel that. You can feel a small one. I have been driving before, and that happens. So you pull over where it's safe. So you're not pulling over in an underpass. You're not parking underneath a large tree or a power pole or a light fixture. You're pulling over someplace safe. You're going to turn off the vehicle. You're going to put it in park, the park brake on. And again, you're going to hold on to your steering wheel, and you're going to wait until it stops.
Okay. The next one being in a store, such as a grocery store.
Yes. Again, dropping down, lowering your center of gravity. There's a real problem with the shelving. Your best bet would be actually not in the aisle. You have the different aisles, and then there's the front of the aisle, which is sort of the main sort of thing, getting there and again, pushing up against the structure, holding on. If you happen to be at the cash register, that's actually a little bit safer because there's areas that you can try and duck under, and there's things that you can hold on to. But it's always getting yourself down low, covering that head, covering the back of your neck, and holding on.
And the last one is in the middle of the night while you are in bed.
So in the middle of the night, if you're in bed, you're not going to get out of bed. you're going to grab your pillow and you're going to sort of sit up, but bend over. You're going to pull that pillow over your head. You're going to hold that there with one arm, and the other arm you're going to hold onto the mattress, and you're going to stay like that until the shaking stops. The other thing is, before this happens, have a look at your bed. Do you have a picture over your bed? Like lots of people do that. Those things tend to fall off unless you actually screw them into the wall. So, and that's the kind of thing that would hit you. So really having, again, it's looking around the room. What could hit me? So in the bed, you kind of sit up, you put that pillow, you pull over, you hold on.
For my next question, how often would you say people should practice an earthquake drill?
At the minimum, at least do the shakeout drill in October. This year it's October the 19th at 10:19 in the morning. But really, you should be practicing it every couple of months and in different places. We work, live, and play in different places. You don't know where you're going to be, so you should practice it at work. You should practice it at home. Just taking opportunities, practice it outside. Hey, if I was outside, where would I go? If I'm here, what would I do? So really, minimum, at least do the shakeout drill with us in October. But realistically, I would try, and this is what I do. I do it once a month or once every couple of months.
To find out more information about earthquake preparation and how to plan on what to do if an earthquake was to happen, you can go to shakeoutbc.ca. There you can also find information on how to join millions of people around the province to take part in the Great BC Shakeout Earthquake Drill on October 19th at 10:19 a.m. Also, the Government of British Columbia has a fill-in-the-blanks home emergency plan and more emergency preparation information at www.gov.bc.ca/preparedbc. I'm Laura McKenzie, host and producer of Mid-Coast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Aubrey Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHOY's newsletter at choi.ca/subscribe for updates on our news department and more. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. You can find more of their music on their Bandcamp. Support local artists by buying their music. If you have a story you would like us to cover, email us at news@choi.ca.
Mid-Coast Morning would not be possible without funding from the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Mid-Coast Morning is a project of CHOY's nonprofit news department. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Salish Sea by making a donation at choi.ca/donate. This podcast acknowledges and gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.